On Christmas morning, I woke up early like I always did. I had baked 3 pies the day before, pecan, pumpkin, and apple cinnamon, and I was planning to reheat the honey-glazed ham I bought from the butcher 2 weeks in advance. My living room was already filled with wrapped presents for the grandkids, labeled with gold tags I had carefully written by hand. At 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter-in-law, Melissa. "Hi, Jean. We've had a last-minute change. The kids are feeling overwhelmed, and we decided to keep things just us four this year. Hope you understand. Merry Christmas." Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. I stared at the screen for a full minute before blinking. I reread the message. It didn't make sense. I was supposed to be there. I had been every year since my son Eric married Melissa. I texted back something like, "Okay, Merry Christmas." I don't even remember the exact words. My fingers were numb. I placed the phone on the kitchen counter and leaned against the sink. The coffee I'd brewed smelled bitter. The ham still sat, untouched, wrapped in foil inside the oven. I didn't cry. Not right away. I stood there for a while, quiet, looking at the folded napkins I had prepared for the Christmas table, red and green cloth ones. I had even ironed them the night before. It wasn't the first time Melissa had made me feel like an outsider, but it was the first time she said it out loud. I didn't call Eric. I didn't want to argue on Christmas morning. He had always been a quiet one, not the type to stand up during conflict. And Melissa, she knew that. From the beginning, she figured out how to speak for both of them. So I sat down at my small table, alone, and had a slice of apple pie with cold coffee. I didn't touch the ham. I left it in the oven. At around noon, I opened Facebook. That was my mistake. Melissa had already posted a dozen pictures from their Christmas brunch. The dining table I had helped them buy 2 years ago was covered in food. The red and green cloth napkins were neatly placed by each plate. My napkins, my pies, even the honey-glazed ham was there. I recognized the carving. The caption read, "Christmas at home with just our little family. Grateful for peace and simplicity." And there it was. Just our little family. That part felt like a slap. They didn't even invite me after all I'd done. And somehow, they still had everything I brought into their lives on their table. Every photo had something I had paid for, cooked, gifted, or offered. Except me. That afternoon, I didn't turn on the TV. I just sat in the recliner with a blanket over my legs and watched the light change through the curtains. Around 4 p.m., I got a text from my friend Linda asking how my day was going. I told her the truth. She replied almost immediately, "That woman never deserved your kindness." Linda was never a fan of Melissa. She had seen the way things shifted slowly over the years. How I was gradually invited to less and less. How my voice meant less around them. How Melissa would cut me off in conversations and Eric would stay silent. I tried to sleep early that night. I left the tree lights on, hoping they would feel like some sort of comfort. But when I laid in bed, I just stared at the ceiling. The next day, I decided to clean. That's what I always did when I didn't want to feel anything. I scrubbed the counters, polished the hallway floor, vacuumed under the couch. In the middle of that, I opened my bank app to check a utility bill. That's when I saw it. A recent charge from a wine and gourmet gift shop downtown. $342.70 now. The charge was made on my card. A card I had given to Eric years ago for emergencies. I stared at it for a few minutes before I checked the rest of the charges. 2 days before Christmas, another charge at a children's toy store. One at a florist, one at a department store. I scrolled and scrolled. It hit me all at once. They had used my money to fund the entire Christmas I wasn't invited to. I didn't say anything right away. I sat down with a pen and notebook and wrote down every single charge I didn't recognize from the past 6 months. I called the bank to request copies of statements. I kept everything organized, down to the cent. After the food, the boys showed me their drawings. The younger one said, "Nana, next time can you come over and help me build a volcano for school?" I smiled. Let me think about it. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't need to. But I was clear on one thing. I would be present when I chose to be, not when I was guilted into it. Later, when I was saying goodbye, Eric walked me to my car. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Thanks for inviting me." He hesitated. "Melissa's trying." I nodded. "So am I." Then I got in the car and drove. Back at my house, I changed into pajamas, made a cup of tea, and looked out the kitchen window. There was no dramatic closure, no apology speeches, no sudden transformation. But I had taken the seat back at the table, my own table. Not the one I was given a corner at, the one I built. And this time, I would decide who gets to sit with me. I didn't expect any grand reconciliation. I didn't want one. The goal was never to be back in their lives as a background figure. I just wanted peace. So when February ended and March rolled in, I made a quiet decision. I wasn't waiting anymore for invitations, for apologies, for space to be offered. I was going to create my own. That Sunday, I cooked a full dinner for the first time since Christmas. Not for guests, not for family, just for myself. Roast chicken, garlic potatoes, green beans with lemon zest. I set the table properly, even unfolded 2 of those red and green napkins from December. Not because it was a holiday, because they were mine. When the food was ready, I poured a glass of water, sat down, and ate in silence. No distractions, no phone beside me, just me, in my house, at my table. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. The following week, I got a call from Linda. She asked if I wanted to come with her to a community center event, some kind of fundraiser dinner. I hadn't been out in a while, so I agreed. I wore a plain blue sweater and slacks, nothing fancy. At the center, we were seated at a table of 8, older couples mostly. One woman named Sharon sat next to me and said she recognized me from the neighborhood. She'd heard I was Eric's mom. I braced myself, but her next words surprised me. "You're the one who always brought pies to the school bake sales, right?" I nodded slowly. "I remember your lemon pie. It was the first thing gone every time." That made me smile. Small, but real. We spent the next hour talking about cooking, how difficult it was to find good fruit in winter, and which spices worked best for chili. Nobody brought up Eric or Melissa again. Nobody asked why I came alone. For the first time in a long time, I felt like just John, not someone's mother, not someone's forgotten relative. Just me. A few days later, Eric sent a picture of the boys through text. No message, just the photo. They were sitting on a bench, eating ice cream cones. The little one had it smeared all over his mouth. I saved the picture without responding. I didn't need to say anything right then. It was enough to see their faces and know they were okay. That weekend, I finally unpacked a box that had been sitting in my hallway closet for years. Old family mementos, photos, cards, drawings from when the boys were toddlers. There was one card I found from Eric, from when he must have been about 16. It was for Mother's Day. I know I don't always say it, but you're the reason everything in our house works. Thank you for everything, even the stuff I don't notice. I sat down on the floor of the hallway and read it twice. He had known. Back then, he had known. I put the card back in the envelope and placed it on the bookshelf. I wasn't chasing that version of him. But I could remember it. That was enough. The next week, Melissa called me. That was a surprise. I didn't answer at first. She left a voicemail. "Hi, Jean. I wanted to ask if you'd be open to stopping by next weekend. We're doing a small barbecue for the kids. Eric said he thinks it might be a good first step." I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. A few days later, Eric texted too. "It's casual. Nothing big. Just if you feel up to it." I thought about it for a long time. I talked to Linda about it. She asked, "What do you want out of it?" I told her the truth. I don't want anything from them, but I do want to know that I can stand in that backyard, eat a hot dog, and not feel like a stranger in front of my own grandchildren. She said, "Then go, but make sure you go as yourself, not as the version they expect." So that Sunday I drove over. Their backyard looked the same as I remembered. Same lawn chairs, same plastic kiddie pool, same uneven patio stones I helped Eric install 6 years ago. The kids ran up to me first. No hesitation. Just little arms wrapping around my waist, ketchup on their cheeks. I hugged them tightly. Melissa came out of the kitchen holding a tray of buns. She gave a short smile. "Hi, Jean." "Hi, Melissa." We didn't hug. That was fine. Eric was at the grill. He looked relieved to see me but didn't say much. I think he knew not to force it. We made small talk. Weather, school, sports. Nothing deep. Nothing about the house or the credit card or the forms I had mailed, but for me that was the point. The silence wasn't loaded anymore. It was just quiet. Her silent bank account, and the woman she didn't even want at her table. "Mom, that's not fair." "Yes, it is." He didn't say anything after that. "We're not enemies, Eric," I told him, "but we're not where we used to be. And that's okay. You made choices. So did I. I just wish we could go back," he muttered. I answered honestly, "I don't." Later that day, Melissa emailed me. It was short and sharp. "You've put us in a very difficult situation. I hope you understand the pressure we're under. Now." "This feels incredibly personal, Jean." I didn't respond. I had no intention of defending my decision, not anymore. She could feel whatever she needed to feel. I'd felt it all first, alone and in silence. I didn't owe her a breakdown of my boundaries. I forwarded the email to a folder labeled "Done." That weekend, I ran into an old neighbor of theirs at the grocery store. Her name was Denise, and she had always been friendly. She stopped me near the produce aisle and said, "Hey, I heard Eric and Melissa are having some trouble with the mortgage company." I just nodded. They said it was something about paperwork getting changed. Everyone's talking about it in the neighborhood group. I picked up a bag of apples. "They'll figure it out." Denise smiled awkwardly. "They probably will. Melissa's always been persistent." I didn't reply. I didn't owe an explanation to the neighborhood. Let them speculate. I had spent too many years worried about appearances. That was over. The following Tuesday, I got a handwritten card in the mail. The return address was Eric and Melissa's. Inside was a note written in Eric's handwriting. "Mom, I know things got messy. I'm not good at fixing things, but I want to. The kids miss you. I miss you too. Can we talk? Just you and me. No pressure. Eric." It caught me off guard. Not the apology. I had stopped waiting for that. But the handwriting. It wasn't typed. It wasn't rushed. He'd taken the time to write it, fold it, and mail it. Still, I didn't call him right away. I let the card sit on the table for 2 full days. On the third day, I dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said. "Got your note." "Yeah. Thanks for calling." "I'm not angry," I said, "but I'm not going back to the way things were." "I get that." We sat in silence for a few seconds. Then he asked, "Can we meet for lunch? Just us?" I agreed. We picked a diner halfway between my house and his. Neutral ground. At the diner? Eric looked nervous. He kept glancing around, like Melissa might show up any second. I didn't ask about her. We talked about the kids for a while. What grades they were in, what they were into now. I smiled when he said Ben was learning chess. That had been my game. Then he lowered his voice and said, "Melissa didn't know. I was meeting you today." I nodded. "I figured. She's having a hard time letting go of control." "So am I," I said honestly. "But we don't always get to stay in charge of everything." He smiled faintly. "I wish I had handled things better, especially Christmas. I should have said something when she decided not to invite you." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. I let her make that call because I didn't want to argue. But now I see what it cost. That's always the deal," I said. "Peace in the house, but damage somewhere else." He looked tired, like someone carrying the weight of choices that were no longer working. "I know we're not going to fix everything over lunch," he said, "but I hope this isn't the end." "It doesn't have to be," I told him, "but you have to. Understand?" I'm done financing disrespect. I'll always be your mother. But I'm not a silent partner anymore. He nodded slowly. That's fair. On the way home, I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. It was something else. Quiet. Steady. Like walking away from something heavy and realizing it doesn't belong on your shoulders anymore. That night, I poured myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and looked at the photo of Eric from when he was 10. He was smiling, holding a birthday cake I had made from scratch. I placed the photo back in the drawer and whispered to no one in particular, I raised a good boy. Then I added, I just need him to remember it. It had been a little over a month since I sat across from Eric at that diner. We hadn't spoken much since then, just a few short texts, mostly about the kids, nothing emotional, nothing messy. And I already spoke to the attorney. You'll get the rest of the documents this week. There was a pause. I just don't get why you're being so extreme. It's not extreme, I replied. It's overdue. He sighed. Melissa's upset. She's always upset when she's not in control. There was silence on the line. Eric cleared his throat. The kids miss you. I miss them too. He waited for me to say more, but I didn't. We can try to fix this, he said finally. No, Eric. You can't fix what you won't admit. And I'm not spending the rest of my life being invited when it's convenient and ignored when it's not. He didn't argue. He just muttered something about figuring it out and ended the call. A week later, I received confirmation from the lender. My name had been officially removed from the title. I was no longer tied to the house, the mortgage, or the financial burden. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry either. It just felt right. Like closing a drawer that had been stuck open for too long. Later that night, I walked through my own house, turning off lights room by room. Everything I owned was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish in the cabinet, every picture on the wall, and none of it came with tension. I hadn't realized how heavy that connection had become until I let it go. The silence from Eric and Melissa continued. No messages, no pictures, no updates. I assumed they were adjusting. Maybe angry. Maybe embarrassed. Maybe both. But I didn't reach out. I kept my distance. The next Sunday, Linda came by with muffins and 2 coffees. She sat at my kitchen table and said, I saw Melissa at the store. Oh? She looked tired, angry, like someone who isn't used to being told no. I didn't say anything. Linda smiled. You look different, though, like someone who finally stopped saying yes. I'm trying, I said. She leaned back in her chair. Took you long enough. We both laughed. That night, I folded the red and green napkins from Christmas. I had washed them weeks earlier but never put them away. They sat untouched in a clean basket, like a reminder of something I didn't want to think about. I refolded them carefully, one by one, and placed them back in the linen drawer, not because I planned to use them again, but because they didn't belong to Eric and Melissa anymore. They never did. It had been about 3 weeks since I mailed the last set of legal documents removing my name from Eric and Melissa's mortgage. I hadn't heard anything since. I figured they were dealing with the bank now. I had made it clear that I wouldn't be involved anymore. They could manage their own finances, sign their own checks, and figure out their own problems like any grown couple. I wasn't going to step in again, not even to explain. But then on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, I saw the transcript. It was from Eric. Mom, can you call me back? We got something from the mortgage company. I think it's a mistake. Please. It wasn't a mistake. It was the reality I had delayed for 7 years finally landing at their doorstep. I didn't call back that night. I didn't want to deal with panic or guilt. I didn't want to hear Melissa in the background whispering instructions. I wanted to stay quiet, just for a little longer. The next morning, he called again. This time I answered. Mom, hey, sorry to bother you. It's just, we got this letter from the lender. It says your name is officially off the loan. That's right, I said calmly. Okay, but I don't think we're approved to refinance without you. At least not right now. I mean, I tried last year and they said our credit needs some work. I stayed silent. Eric went on. So, if your name's off and we don't get approved, does that mean it means the house is now fully your responsibility? I said. That's what you wanted, isn't it? Yeah, but it just happened so fast. I thought we'd have time to plan. You had 7 years, Eric. He didn't respond right away. Then he asked, did we do something that bad? I almost laughed. Instead, I answered, you cut me out of your life and used my money to do it. I think that counts as bad enough. He sighed hard. We were just trying to make the holidays peaceful. They were peaceful for you? I said. Not for me. Melissa's really upset. I'm sure she is, I replied. She lost her free babysitter. No more pretending I'm part of the family when I'm only good enough to fund it. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said quietly. But you did, I said. And Melissa did. And I let it happen for too long. That's on me. He nodded. Slowly. Do you want to see the boys? He asked after a long pause. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say yes, of course. But I was still raw. Still holding years of hurt. I couldn't walk back into that house pretending nothing had happened. Not right now, I said. I'll reach out when I'm ready. He nodded again. Okay. Then he turned and walked to his car. I went back inside and poured the coffee into the sink. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just didn't want anything that felt like guilt wrapped in caffeine. I stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at the spot where the napkins had once been folded and waiting to be used. They were probably still at Eric and Melissa's house, sitting in a drawer, part of their new Christmas traditions. I wasn't going to ask for them back. Some things you leave behind. After Eric left that afternoon, things went quiet again. No calls, no texts, no let's talk about this or I've been thinking, just silence. I didn't expect anything different. I had spent years waiting for recognition that never came. This time I wasn't going to hope. I was done holding my breath around people who treated me like an afterthought. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my folder of documents, the mortgage statement, the car title, the insurance paperwork. I had been involved in more of their financial life than I realized. Not out of obligation, but because over the years, I had stepped in every time they asked for help. When Eric and Melissa first bought their house, the loan was denied under just their names. Eric called me one night, embarrassed, saying the bank required a cosigner or they'd lose the deal. We'll refinance later, he said. It's just to get us in the door. That was 7 years ago. They never refinanced. My name was still on the property. The next morning, I made a list of everything where my name appeared. Not just in payments, but legally. I contacted a lawyer I'd used once before, just for clarity. I wasn't planning a lawsuit. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I just wanted my name removed. I wanted out. Completely. When I explained the situation to the attorney, she asked only one question. Why now? Because they finally said out loud what they've always shown me, I answered. I'm not part of their family. I'm just useful. She nodded and started drafting the forms. By the end of the week, I had signed the necessary documents to begin the process: title removal, withdrawal from co-ownership, authorization cancellations. On Friday morning, I mailed the forms certified with return receipt. No surprises, no middle-of-the-night bank freezes. Just a formal, final step away from something I should have let go of years ago. 2 days later, on Sunday, Melissa showed up at my house. I saw her through the window before she even rang the doorbell. She was wearing sunglasses, her coat open, holding her phone in one hand like she was expecting backup. I opened the door and didn't invite her in. Hi, Jean, she said, tone clipped. Melissa, I need to ask why you sent property forms to our mortgage lender. Eric just found out. I want my name removed, I said. I don't want to be responsible for a house I don't live in, pay for, or visit. But you haven't paid. The mortgage in over a year, she snapped. Why now? I paid the first 3 years entirely, I said. And when I asked Eric to refinance, you both said it wasn't the right time. Melissa didn't deny it. She shifted on her feet, clearly irritated. Jian, let's not pretend this is about some paperwork. You're mad about Christmas. Yes, I said. I am. I was excluded. And then I found out I was also funding the celebration I wasn't welcome at. You can't have it both ways. She sighed. We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just, we needed space. I nodded. You got it. Now I'm getting mine. She didn't respond. I waited a moment before asking, Is there anything else? She shook her head. No. I closed the door gently. No shouting, no guilt. Just the end of a transaction that had gone on too long. The next day, Eric called. His voice was tense. You sent paperwork to pull your name from everything? Yes, I said. I almost tossed it without looking, until I remembered the holiday season had just passed, and I wanted to see if anything slipped through. I sat down at the kitchen table and started scanning the line items. $84.95, home goods, December 14th, $212.40, wine and dye, spirits, December 17th, $69.99, online toy store, December 18th, $33.21, gas station, December 19th, $41.65, grocery store, December 21st, $3.99, electronics store, December 22nd, I froze. Those weren't my charges. I hadn't bought toys or wine. I hadn't gone to any electronics store. And I certainly didn't fill up a car I don't drive. It was all tied to the same card I had given Eric, just in case. I stared at the totals again. The numbers weren't massive on their own, but together they painted a clear picture. They had used my money to pay for their entire Christmas. Gifts, food, decorations, even the gas to drive wherever they were going. And while I was sitting alone in my kitchen, eating leftover pie, they were carving a ham I paid for under string lights I probably helped fund. I took a deep breath. I didn't. Call Eric. I didn't yell or demand an explanation. I opened my laptop, logged into the credit card portal, and downloaded 6 months of statements. Then I got a yellow legal pad and wrote down every single purchase that didn't come from me, Melissa's spa charges, Eric's gas station bills, toys, alcohol, restaurant takeout, groceries from stores I never shop at. The list was long. By the time I finished adding it all up, I sat back in my chair and stared at the number. $719.86, that's what they had spent on my card between September and the end of December. Nearly $4,000, without asking, without permission, without even thanking me. I closed the notebook and stood up. I was shaking, but not out of rage. I was shaking because I finally realized this wasn't about one Christmas. It had never been just about the dinner I missed. This was years in the making. And I had allowed it to happen because I wanted to feel needed. But they didn't need me. They used me. The next day, I went to the bank and scheduled an official dispute on the charges I could prove were not mine. I didn't want to press fraud charges. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted the account locked, the card reissued under my name only, and a clean line drawn in the sand. The bank employee, a young woman with kind eyes, looked at me after going through the paperwork and said, "You've been very patient with this, Mrs. Harper." I didn't say much. I just nodded. It wasn't about patience. It was about waking up. 2 days later, Eric showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him in person since before Thanksgiving. He looked tired, holding a takeout coffee in one hand like it was a peace offering. I opened the door and stepped outside, not inviting him in. "Hey," he said. "Hey, can we talk?" "We're talking." He looked down at his shoes and then handed me the coffee. "I didn't know you were going to cancel everything," he said. "Melissa told me the credit card was frozen, that you filed a dispute." I did. He looked surprised that I didn't deny it. "Mom, I didn't think you'd go that far." "That far?" I repeated. "You mean stop paying for your holidays after you cut me out of them?" He shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that. It was just a stressful time. We were trying to keep things calm for the kids. And the best way to do that was to cut your mother out and use her card to pay for everything? He didn't answer. I looked at him for a long moment. Do you even know how much you charged between fall and Christmas? He hesitated, then shook his head. Almost $4,000, I said. Not counting the years before that. Not counting the mortgage payments I helped with, the car insurance, the kids' tuition, grocery bills, you name it. His mouth opened, then closed. I could see he was trying to find something to say. You didn't just forget to invite me, I continued. You erased me, and then you built your perfect family holiday on top of my money. Eric finally looked up. His eyes were red. I think that was the first time he saw me. Not as a woman he owed things to, not as someone who'd always be there, but as his mother. A real person. I'm sorry, he said, but the words were thin. Too late. Too small. I'm not doing this anymore, I told him. No more shared accounts. No more surprise charges. I contacted the energy company to stop the auxiliary account I had opened in their name when they were first married. It was still active. Each representative asked the same question. Would you like to notify the account holders? No, they'd find out on their own. It took me nearly 3 hours to get through all of it. But when I was done, I felt lighter. Not happy, exactly. Just clearer. Like I had finally stopped pretending. The next morning, Eric called. Hey, Mom, he said. His voice sounded casual, like nothing had happened. Hi, Eric. Weird thing. Our internet was cut off. Did you do something with the account? I canceled it, I said, plain and simple. Oh, okay, he said, confused. Why? Because I've been paying it for years, and you didn't invite me to Christmas dinner. There was a long silence, then a week. Mom, it wasn't personal. Melissa just wanted something low-key this year. I understand, I said calmly. And I want something low-key too, like not paying for your bills anymore. Wow. Okay, he said, his voice getting tight. I didn't think you'd get this upset. I didn't get upset, Eric, I said. I got tired. He didn't respond right away. Then he sighed. Okay. I guess we'll figure it out. I'm sure you will. He hung up after that. No apology, no explanation, just confusion that the well had stopped flowing. That afternoon, Melissa texted me for the first time since Christmas. Hey, I heard you canceled some of the stuff you were helping us with. Everything okay? No hygiene. No, sorry we left you out. Just straight to the point. I didn't answer her text. The next day, she sent another one. Just want to understand what's going on. Did we do something to upset you? I stared at the screen and then deleted the message. I wasn't going to teach a grown woman how to recognize cruelty. By the following week, I started receiving silent treatment from both of them. No calls, no updates, no photos of the grandkids. They weren't mad that I stopped helping. They were mad that I stopped letting them take. I think deep down, Melissa always saw me as something temporary. A helper, a quiet wallet, someone to watch the kids, pay the bills, and stay out of the way. She never saw me as part of the family, just as someone who came with Eric, like furniture. And Eric, he had gotten used to silence. He had gotten used to nodding along with Melissa, keeping the peace. I stopped expecting him to defend me years ago, but now I wasn't even sure he remembered who I was before all this. It hurt, of course. I won't pretend it didn't. There were nights when I sat in bed staring at photos on my phone. Birthdays, holidays, backyard barbecues where the boys played with toy trucks and called me Nana in little voices. I missed them, more than I could put into words. But missing someone doesn't mean you let them treat you like you don't exist. So I stayed quiet. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't ask for anything. I let the silence do the talking. By mid-January, the messages from Melissa stopped entirely. Eric didn't call. I figured they were hoping I'd get over it and go back to the way things were. But that wasn't going to happen. One afternoon, I was cleaning out a drawer and found a note Eric had written me back when he was in college. It said, "Mom, thank you for everything you do. I don't say it enough, but I notice it all. I love you." It brought tears to my eyes. That boy loved me. That boy saw me. That boy used to call me just to say hi, not to ask for anything. And now he stood by while his wife excluded me from the family table. I folded the note back up and put it in my nightstand. Not everything has to be thrown away. Some things you keep, not because they still feel good, but because they remind you of who you used to be before the world got louder than your heart. By the time February started, I had settled into something that felt close to peace. Not happiness, not yet. But the quiet was different now. It wasn't filled with waiting. I wasn't looking at my phone hoping for messages from Eric or pictures of the boys. I had accepted that they weren't going to reach out unless they needed something, and for once, I had nothing left to give. That week, I was sorting mail when I saw an envelope from my credit card provider. It was one of those monthly statements. I usually check online, but this one had a promotion insert inside. It wasn't about the money, not really. I could survive. I had savings, but it was the principle. It was the feeling that I had been turned into a silent bank account. No voice, no seat at the table, just a balance to be quietly drained. I didn't sleep that night either. I laid awake thinking about every little time I had swallowed my pride. Like the time Melissa asked me not to bring gifts to the grandkid's birthday because she didn't want clutter. Or when Eric forgot Mother's Day and said, "Melissa had a rough week. We were focused on the kids." I had always smiled and told myself it wasn't worth the conflict, but now I was sitting here, alone, on the holiday I loved most, while they dined with my food, my money, and no shame. The following Monday, I drove to the bank. I met with, a representative and had the secondary card on the account permanently removed. I set new passwords. I requested full control over every automatic payment and closed a shared savings account Eric didn't even know I was still contributing to. The woman at the desk asked, "Would you like to notify the secondary cardholder of these changes?" Smiled politely. "No, I believe they'll figure it out." When I returned home, I made tea and sat by the window. I felt calm, not angry, not vengeful, just calm. Like I had finally turned off a faucet that had been leaking for years. That night, for dinner, I ate the honey-glazed ham, alone, and it tasted better than anything I had eaten in years. The following week passed slowly. After Christmas, the city quieted down. Decorations lingered on streetlights, but the energy was gone. Every day felt muted. I tried to stay busy. I reorganized the pantry. I started sorting out old winter clothes to donate. I even cleaned out the shed behind the house. But no matter what I did, I couldn't stop thinking about how they'd left me out like I didn't matter. On New Year's Eve, I received a group text from Eric. It said, "Happy New Year, wishing everyone a healthy and joyful 2024. There was a photo attached. Him, Melissa, and the kids, all smiling, sparkling juice in their glasses, fireworks in the background. No mention of me, no direct message, just one big group text that probably went out to everyone in his contact list. I didn't reply. I didn't say anything. I had been reduced to a name in a group message. It took me 3 more days to decide what I was going to do with the rest of the financial ties I still had with them. There was still the car insurance, which I had been paying on Eric's vehicle for 5 years. The internet bill. I had started covering that when they first bought their home and said things were tight. I had never turned any of those expenses off. I just kept paying. When I added it all up, I realized I had paid close to $2,800 in the past 2 months alone. That same evening, I opened a drawer in my home office and pulled out a stack of birthday cards and thank you notes from Melissa over the years. I read through them. "Thank you for the beautiful stroller. We couldn't have done it without you. Thanks for helping us cover rent while Eric was looking for work. You're always so generous." I stared at those words. Generous. It wasn't generosity if it was expected. It wasn't kindness if it came with silence and distance. I had paid for so many things over the years, but the cost that hurt the most was emotional. They had slowly turned me into someone who only existed when they needed help. I didn't sleep well that night. At around 2:30 a.m., I sat in the living room with the lights off and remembered the time Melissa came to me in tears, telling me she was overwhelmed. With the kids, I had rearranged my entire week to stay with the boys, cooked, cleaned, helped with bedtime. And not once after that did she invite me to stay for dinner again. I remembered birthdays where I was told, just swing by before the guests arrive, or Christmas mornings where I was given a 5-minute window to give the presents before they rushed off to see Melissa's side. And I kept going. I kept showing up, like a fool. But after what happened on Christmas, something in me changed. It wasn't a loud change. It was quiet, firm. I was done being an accessory to their life. That Friday, I called the insurance company and removed myself from Eric's plan. I closed the automatic internet payment,